Yeah, so hey guys, the two topics of this video. One, how do we, it's advice really. One is some advice with a question, and the other one is, one is, how do we keep ourselves safe and overcome the need of retaliation when we see that apparently, according to the outside, the narcissist or the borderline or whatever cluster B they are doesn't care that they've been exposed, because it looks like they have a support. Because you learn from experience, and I decided to expose them. Like I had a handful of confrontations where I exposed the two idiots who raised me to their face, but I never recorded them and I never told anyone else. And I thought, well, you know what? I moved out of home. I live in a different house. It's now safe to expose them to other people. What a fatal flaw that was, except for it wasn't fatal because I'm alive. But because I was still in the same big town. They call it a city, but it's only 1/5 the size of this city, as in population, but it's the same landmass. I had multiple death threats. I had people come and threaten things and other things like that. There was a couple of close calls, but at the same time I had my wits about me. It was my wits that saved my ass. And it was when I left the region that one of my siblings, because I dropped my guard to my sibling in the means that I gave her, because I was brought up as the oldest and the only son. That's a pretty big deal in any culture, but especially if your father is Māori, which is a Polynesian culture, because our travelling history, like what we knew about, we were at the Cook Islands and the Solomon Islands and Samoa and Tonga, all over the place, but our strongest connection is to Tonga. Came here. Some say it was 1200 AD, some say it was 800 AD, but whatever. And so that's why Māoris, different tribes of Māoris, look different to each other, but they look similar to different Pacific Island groups, because each different tribe came from different islands. Well, there was... Oh yeah, no more walking paths here. So I have to turn around and go back. There were seven canoes that came. There were the migration canoes. Between 800 or maybe even earlier, depending on which tribe elder you talk to. Europeans used to believe it was 1200 AD, but the elders have proof it was at least 800 AD. So, anyway, they're all different tribes look like different ones. As you can tell, I don't look like one because I'm 1/4, so it's my dad's. It was my father's father who was born and raised in that community in a marae, which was like the traditional setting that was the case when the way they were living when the Europeans first had contact with them. So they had a certain way at that stage, because let's be honest, people live and learn off each other and all this type of stuff and adapt accordingly. So at the time, that's how the tribes were living. And so my grandfather was brought up in that environment, had some children with my nana, who was part Scottish, part English heritage, born and raised in New Zealand. So was her parents. And my dad was born. He grew up, had children with my mother, who's got a Scottish heritage with a bit of Welsh too. So, anyway, my sibling, one of the two younger sisters I was raised with. I'm actually one of 6, but because of, I think it's just societal standards and the narcissists wanting to look good. Everyone knew that there was 3 older ones. We knew there was 3. I had another 2 older sisters, half sisters, and an older half brother. My older half brother was spent, well, I don't know how many years now, but the last time I met him was 2009, 2010, around that period. And he has struggled opening up because he's a real strong man, really is a strong man. I know he cares about me, and I care about him. But I went to his town and visited him a couple of times. I gave him the address to come home, but he never did. Remember, I was back in that place at the time, remember? Maybe he was wise, because he revealed to me that the male idiot had said to him what his father had said to him: "Don't ever call me your father. I am not your father. You don't belong to this family. You're not one of mine." Because I remember when I was 10 years old, excited to see my brother, and that was the first time that I had met him outside of the marae setting. And yes, he got told that from my dad, and being a guy who was around that age, you know, oh shit, there's that brick down there. I've driven down here many times, but I haven't walked down here many times because I'm trying other walk tracks and stuff. You know, and in the Navy, vulnerability can be seen as a weakness, you know. But anyway, back in 2009, 2010, I knew that at the time he had been in the Navy for 17 years. He's 10 years older than me. Anyway, I got 2 older sisters too. Same thing happened to them. Everyone knows about it, but some of my aunties and uncles said, look, we know all these things, but we like him and we like your mother way more than we ever liked you. No one ever liked you. And they just spouted it out clearly. And so I left it. But then at different work environments, I bumped into people that I didn't know that knew the male idiot, because he'd been playing golf for many years. He used to own his own building company where he would work for himself. You know, he didn't own a big one, but he has to, you know, and every now and then employ a couple others to give him a hand. And then 2011 he became a commercial cleaner, and these people knew him. And despite all this information, they had claimed they knew about, which was all true. None of them cared, and they all just said, well, everyone likes him way more than they ever liked you, and we don't give a shit. So I used to think, how do you defeat that? Especially when you got people moving into the apartment building where you're staying, where a whole building where a whole ton of people stay, they pay for each room. And some of them move in and bring up his name, and then they say, you know what you need to do? You need to go over to his house and you need to love him anyway. Oh, well, none of this has happened since I left the region. That guy that gave me a hard time at that workplace, I actually opened up and told him, look, how's your parents going? Or both of them, should I say. Both of them. Because, excuse me, but my parents are very toxic, and they're so toxic that none of their children want anything to do with them. So that's how toxic they are. So we just prefer that, I just prefer that you don't ask me about it. That's how he found out. He knows nothing about my dad. Well, maybe he had a look on my YouTube and said, hey, his father worked in, I sell building products. His father was a builder for 30 years. Well, as a labourer and yardsman, and then he was a site site manager. Then he ran his own business. So, and I seem to be saying the same things that he says, and so maybe I'll just take sides that way. That was the labourer, not the manager, the labourer. He comes from a similar culture as well. So, and there's you can tell healthy leaders and toxic leaders in every culture, right? Because for the amount of toxic leaders in those cultures, there's the same amount of healthy leaders in those cultures. And there's the same amount of servants and helpful people. Just like with the European cultures. Toxic leaders, healthy leaders, people who are givers and people who are takers. That's everywhere. You got to look at the personalities, and you got to look at how they treat others, and not look at what they look like on the outside and how much money they make. You got to look at the previous things I mentioned. What are their qualities? What are their values? How do they treat others? That's it. So yeah, my advice would be just to carry on with your life. Because they can make as much racket as they want up in that region. I couldn't care less. Now, I had received a few bombshells because there was people that I really trusted. Turned out to be that they were handing off information. Because all of a sudden, after we no contact, all this information they knew that I trusted them with for years was now being brought up with people that I hadn't even met before, or people that I'd met a few times before but didn't know they had any. Hello, how are you? Having a good day?
What? Yep.
I'm just crossing the. I'm just saying hello because I'm crossing the road and heading that way. Because the roads are the walkways are getting smaller, and I'm trying to get back around those corners all the way back to by the cafes and stuff up there.
Eastbourne?
Yeah, Eastbourne.
Yeah,
it just goes right around.
Road.
Yeah, I walk down here on a walk.
Okay. I live around there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, no, you can't walk on that side. You get run over. You need to cross over. Cross
Yeah,
over
yeah.
without anyway, sorry, you're blabbing.
Oh,
Sure
okay.
you know which way to walk.
Oh yeah, well, it's the first time down here because I'm actually from Hawke's Bay. But I've been here for a couple of months now.
What are you doing here?
I moved down here because I just wanted to live in a new region.
So where are you living?
I live in this region. I'm sorry, I'm talking to someone on the phone, but I've got them waiting. Alright, you have a good day. Lovely lady. So yeah, turns out that these friends that I had for 7 or 8 years or sometimes longer weren't so friendly after all, because as soon as I went no contact and they knew everything that had gone on, they started pawning off all the, all these people were saying the information that I only had told them. That's it. I'm in a new region now. I got all these memories. I don't know if I'll ever forget all these memories. I don't know if I want to, because would I actually find myself in a similar situation ever again if I forgot these things? But as you can tell, I'm just going about my life even though they came across my mind. It doesn't stop me. Across the road now earlier because I can see some walk past up there too. This one's real small, but it's all good. And yes, I think that's how you defeat that. Oh, I exposed them. It seems like they don't give a shit because all these people are saying we don't give a shit. We always liked them far better than we ever liked you anyway. And then you get, threats by druggies and stuff. How do we defeat that? Oh. Just as you can tell, I haven't forgotten, but my life is way, way, way better. I don't know if I ever want to forget, just in case I might forget and be my natural self without keeping these things in mind, where it's good to be your natural self, but also to keep these things in mind for when you bump into similar people. So I think that's how you defeat that. And I was going to talk about another topic too, but I'm running out of time. Alright, but I pretty much talked about that other topic in here anyway, just didn't name it out.